Hi. Are lawmakers working for you? Are they working for the governor? Or are they working for special corporate interests that are donating to campaigns? With me today, I have Dr. Nancy Lawther. I am Robert Asencio, and this is Let's Talk with Robert Asencio. So, Nancy, let's jump right into this. You know, we know that recently there was a special session called legislative special session, and I want you to explain what a special session is and kind of go into that to educate people. But also, we know that the special session was on the heels of the actual legislative session, which was what, a month before, maybe a month and a half before?
Right.
And there was 60 days of continuous legislative debate back and forth. And prior to that, people don't realize is that before the legislative session starts every year, there's a couple months where meetings occur, committee meetings occur, the agenda issues are pretty much discussed, bills are introduced. Those are legislative proposals that, if passed, become law. So there's a whole long train of time where legislators are engaged with the process, yet we come to the point where after session's done, they have to call a special session. And now there's another special session. Oh my goodness. Let's talk about that, Nancy.
Right. So you asked the question about what the legislature is doing. Whom is it serving?
Who are they working for?
Who are they working for? And traditionally, the cynical answer is that they're working for campaign contributors and corporations and special interests. And that's the usual paradigm that people use. This year in particular, and especially with the special sessions that have been called, because there was actually one in November, if you recall, back November 15th to 19th.
Yeah.
There was a special session on vaccine mandates and mask mandates. That was called by the governor. The next
that was to finish out last year, the work that was done.
No, actually, it was a reaction to the federal policy.
Oh, that's right. I stand corrected.
Right. And therefore, according to Governor DeSantis, it was an emergency, and also an emergency because schools were meeting again, and there were mask mandates in certain districts. And so the governor had written an executive order, but it had not been codified into law. So the legislature got called back into special session in November to put it into law, because there's a difference between an executive order and, let us say, the will of the people through its representatives.
Let me ask a question. Let's put this into context. Let's bring it down for people, everyday people, because most of people don't really follow what's going on in the legislature. Most people would rather watch paint dry than
it's equivalent.
Yeah. So let me ask you, the audience, right? What are the issues that are creating the most amount of economic hardship and difficulties in your life? Are they the culture wars? Are they legalization of abortion? Are they the mask? Or are they economic? And are those issues being addressed? I ask you.
Well, if you stand in a grocery store line, you are going to run into somebody behind you and ahead of you, and you yourself, as you pick up that $5 gallon worth of milk. Inflation is certainly one of the issues, the cost of food. But you have to bring that food back to a house. And can you afford the house? So the cost of housing. And that indeed was a common criticism about the previous legislative session that just ended in March, that they did not really address the pocketbook issues that are really facing everyday citizens in Miami-Dade County. So that's why this next special session is going to be very interesting because this is the one about property insurance.
So I want to go there real quick, but I wanted to make sure that people understood. So the first special session pre 2022, the one that
Right.
occurred in November,
Right.
was about putting into law an executive order, what was mandated by an executive order, the ban on masks, right?
Right.
And that's personal issues. I mean, that's personal preference right there. Okay, people don't want to wear masks. Some people want to wear masks, but then
And it was also a tug of war between federal power and state power.
okay,
Now, the second session, which was called for April 19th to 22nd.
that was after the legislative session, 60-day session
60
that they should have taken care of all business.
Yeah. Well, that was called because the governor vetoed the congressional map.
Okay,
And the congressional map that the legislature had passed did not please him because he wanted substantial changes to one district in North Florida that at the moment is represented by an African American. And the changes
specifically Congressman Al Lawson.
that is correct. That is correct. So the changes the governor was interested in would have vastly changed that district and really split it up. So he called the legislature back into session almost immediately upon vetoing their plan, and he wanted his plan passed. That was the initial call. But then things got a little more complicated and a little more targeted, and the target turned out to be Disney, Mickey Mouse. Because
That's a powerful mouse.
That's a powerful mouse. And the whole question of removing a special taxing district that had existed since 1967, the Reedy Creek Special Taxing District, and also taking away a special privilege that was given to Disney just last year, with respect to being carved out of a bill addressing big tech.
And that was because, and the governor said it the other day. I mean, he was down in South Florida. He was at a luncheon, and he said, it was a reaction to Disney criticizing the parental rights bill, also known, passing a parental rights bill into law, also known as Don't Say Gable.
That's
But
correct.
now, I think we're coming to a theme here. This is not about bashing the government. This is about putting facts to context. It appears from what you've said that the legislature is following the governor's mandates, right? They should be an independent body.
That is
Second branch of government.
That is a question that has certainly arisen this year in particular, because legislation has been proposed in advance of the legislative session that the governor would like passed, and lo and behold, it passes. There was conflict with respect to the maps. The legislature really didn't want any drama. But now we've got drama, we've got lawsuits, and this is going to play out. The Disney situation is going to play out in the courts as well. So now finally, after a push by a number of legislators to get property insurance before the legislature.
Feel the pain of property insurance.
Right.
Ugh.
Right. I was talking to somebody at a completely unrelated meeting the other day. He came up to me. He knows that I follow what goes on in the legislature. And he said, can't you please do something about the cost of property insurance? And then somebody else.
As if it was so easy.
As if. So finally, there was a movement by a number of legislators to indeed schedule a special session. And that is one way that a special session can arise.
Well, let's talk about what is a special session?
Okay.
For those that don't know. I mean, we
Right,
keep talking
right.
about it, but I think that some people would
They may
benefit.
They may not know. By the terms of the Florida Constitution, the Florida legislature meets in regular session for 60 days and 60 days only, unless it's extended, and sometimes it's extended by a couple of days if they have not
Mhm.
reached agreement on the budget. But anything else has to be considered via a special session that can be called either by a 2/3 majority or more of the call of each chamber. So the Senate and the House each have to vote with 2/3 majority or better to call a special session, or the governor can do it. And usually, well, in fact, always, when there is a call for a special session, the materials that will be discussed, the topics are clearly laid out, and you cannot go beyond that.
Okay.
So, what is upcoming, and this is going to be May 23rd to 27th. So, not this coming week, but the following week, we're going to have something on property insurance that also may go into the area of lawsuits and code, the building code. And then there is talk as well. It's not come into fruition. We haven't seen it yet, but there is some talk of even expanding it into some of the cultural issues. Once more, abortion is one consideration that a number of interest groups are pushing to include. And then another group is pushing to include so-called permitless carry for firearms, so you would no longer need a weapons permit in order to carry.
And I recognize that all these issues are important to many people, right?
Right.
But the reality is that in the state of Florida, certainly South Florida, we have some other priorities, like economic issues. Are we going to be able to afford to stay in our houses? If we sell our houses, can we afford to move into another home or buy another home? Those people who don't have that luxury of being able to buy a home or don't want to buy a home that would like to rent, can they afford rental properties?
Right.
Last week or the last 2 weeks, I was helping a member of the family find a efficiency. And the prices of efficiencies, I'm talking about a room that's maybe a couple hundred square feet, were anywhere from $1,700 to $2,000. There's some apartments that are ranging from, if you can find them, right? Because I understand that at that price range, the inventory is very low. There are apartments that are one single bedroom apartments, a couple hundred more square feet than the efficiency, are ranging between $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month. Who can afford that?
Right. And Miami is now designated as one of the most expensive areas in the country.
So it's not government's job, and we'll all agree with this. It's not government's job to, create jobs for you, to be able to make all kinds of money. It's not government's job to ensure that you'll be able to afford a house, but it's government's job to make sure that there's protection and that the environment is constructive and positive enough for all of us to thrive.
Yeah. Now, one of the factors, of course, beyond the fact that a number of people moving to Miami-Dade County and who may be used to higher rents and higher housing prices, and therefore the local market is suffering because of that. But property insurance as well is really galloping. And for those people who own commercial properties, in particular, they're passing along those costs.
So what kind of changes can we expect to see in this session? Since the call, by the way, there's a call for the session, right? The purpose of the session is to deal with property insurance, but what kind of changes can we see?
I think we can
expect?
We can take a clue from a couple of bills that were actually proposed and heard in committee during the past legislative session that ended in March, but that never made it across the finish line. And, for example, provisions that were in both the Senate and the House bill included a crackdown on contractors. contractors who, after, for example, a storm, might roam around a neighborhood looking for a damaged roof. And we have known that phenomenon ever since the days of
I've experienced
Andrew.
it a number of times.
Right. Many of us have.
Knocking on the door. Hey, can I do your roof? And
Right,
who are you?
right. And the question of a little unsavory behavior on the part of the contractor who suggests that, well, maybe we can declare a little more damage than
Yeah,
actually.
the adjusters. I mean,
Exactly.
is that what they are? The people who come out and they do assessment of how much damage, and then you have like a little leak in the corner, and all of a sudden you're
Suddenly you're getting a complete replacement.
rebuild of the house.
Right. So there's a crackdown potentially
Okay.
in the works on contractors and what they have to put in the contract in big, bold letters so the homeowner is aware that they could be prosecuted for fraud.
But will that bring down property insurance rates? Which I think that's the biggest issue now. Is one is the property insurance rates, because there's only a limited number of companies.
Right.
So
It's that is one of the many factors involved.
you think
Because
they're going to be that bold and address that?
I think they are, but it may not be.
Excuse me, I need to look at the time here and make sure we're on time. Yeah.
Right.
Good.
It may not be necessarily consumer friendly.
Can you explain that?
Yes. For example, I had property insurance a number of years ago, windstorm insurance with Citizens. And then came another company, a private company, that said, all right, we can remove your policy from Citizens and you can be insured with us.
Mhm.
So I took a look at that policy and I looked at the company and their financials and I thought, no way. That company is not stable enough for me to go with them. I'm going to stick with Citizens. I had that option. Now, there is consideration that the homeowner will not have that option anymore.
Yeah, there's a purge, if you will.
Right. If indeed the premium for the takeout company is no more than 20% over the Citizens premium. Then another possibility that all new policies would have to be with the private insurers unless the premium were 20% or more. Another provision where rates would be allowed to rise by a certain percentage every year, which could be.
Could that be like caps?
Yes, caps, but the caps are not necessarily low, starting at a rate, an increase of 11%. And in the House version, it goes to 12%, 13%, 14%, 15%. So, as I said, not necessarily consumer friendly, but meant to encourage private insurers as alternatives to the state managed system, Citizens, to offer insurance. There are some other provisions as well dealing with lawsuits. Well, in Florida, if you look on a yearly basis, about 9% of all of the claims for property damage occur in the state of Florida, nationwide.
9%.
9%.
That's a lot.
79% of the lawsuits challenging the amount awarded by the insurance company are in Florida.
79% of the lawsuits across the country?
Yes.
My Lord.
So
there's definitely an imbalance there.
There is an imbalance that the legislature views as a problem that needs to be solved from a legal standpoint, and therefore the possibility of assessing attorney fees. If you bring a lawsuit saying your insurance company has not paid enough, and you lose that lawsuit, you can be liable for their attorney fees. So it would discourage some of those lawsuits from being filed, particularly is let's throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks. And if we get more money, great. And if we don't, well, no harm done. But now there would be a penalty. So there is concern about that.
We must continue this conversation because I got to tell you, I have so many more questions. But look, for those of you that are watching, I ask you to please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video on YouTube, like it on social media, and please share, retweet, but please share. We need to get the information out. We have been speaking with Dr. Nancy Lawther of New Era Alliances, LLC. But here's the takeaway. If you don't like what's going on in government, it's very important you get out there and vote. And certainly talk to your legislators, but do the research. Vote. There's a legislator that's not representing you correctly and not addressing your issues, you have the right to tell them and vote for someone else. But I will tell you that the state of Florida, it seems like the three branches of government are all now consolidated into one.
Let us say that they're marching in lockstep.
It's very dangerous when you have three branches of government united, because the best part of government is the checks and balances of three independent bodies of government that really are accountable to you, the people. Nancy, can we continue the conversation?
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
So we'll have to see, maybe do a post special legislative session, what, number 3?
Right. Number 3.
Wrap up?
So far. Number
Yeah.
3 and counting.
Well, we'll do the one after 3. So we got to keep these things like bite sizes, because it's a lot of information, a lot of stuff, a lot of people being hosed. Well, this has been another conversation. Let's talk with Robert Asencio. You know, it's up to you, the audience, what topics we bring. So drop us a line. Nancy, I can't thank you enough.
My pleasure.
To Elian, the producer behind the scenes, Grant Michael Miller, the Community News Network, we can't thank you enough. To New Era Alliances, who's also co-sponsoring the show, we can't thank you enough. Look forward to seeing you next time. And this has been another episode. Thank you.